Goods Act 1930. So before going for the concept, let me introduce the concept. In 1930, Section 76 to Section 123 of the Indian Contract Act were repealed and a separate act called the Indian Sale of Goods Act 1930 was passed. It came into force on 1st July 1930. Therefore, sale of goods is one of the specific forms of contracts regularized and regulated by the law in India. Before going for the areas in the Sale of Goods Act, let us have a glance about four important factors that matters in a Sale of Goods Act. As the title itself indicates, goods is one of the important terms where we are going to discuss about it at a later stage. The second one is the seller and the buyer. Let us check up these two terms. Buyer means a person who buys or agrees to buy the goods, whereas the term seller means a person who sells or agrees to sell goods. And finally, one of the important terms that is relevant to the Sale of Goods Act is the price. The consideration for the sale must be always the price. Now, let us check up what is a contract of sale as per the section 4 of the Indian Sale of Goods Act. It is a contract of sale of goods is a contract whereby the seller transfers or agrees to transfer the property in the goods to the buyer for a price. That is, the money consideration should be always money. Now, let us consider what are the essentials of a valid contract of sale of goods. First one, it should be or there should be a contract, that is what we call as bilateral contract, because the property in goods has to pass from one party to another. That is, the ownership has to pass from the seller to the buyer. Second one, transfer of property. The object of contract of sale must be the transfer of property. That is, the meaning is ownership in goods from one person to the other. And the main subject matter of the contract of sale of goods is the goods. Next one, price or money consideration. The goods must be sold for some price. Where the goods are exchanged for goods, it is called as barter and not come under the purview of Sale of Goods Act, and therefore we won't consider it as a sale. Just like any other valid contract, sale is also a contract. Therefore, all the essential elements of a valid contract must be present in a contract of sale. Let us now check up what is the meaning and what includes goods. Goods means every kind of movable property other than actionable claim and money, which includes stock, and shares, growing crops, grass, and things attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be served before sale or under the contract of sale. And the term sale includes electricity, electronic signals, cable, TV signals, lottery tickets, debentures, goodwill, patents, trademarks, copyright, water, etc. These are the examples of goods. Now, let us check up what are the various classifications of goods. Sale of Goods Act has classified the goods into three broad categories. One is existing goods, future goods, and contingent goods. Let us check up what are existing goods. Existing goods are such goods as are in existence at the time of contract of sale. That is, they are owned or possessed by the seller at the time of sale. Now, existing goods are of different categories, like again existing goods may be subdivided into the following categories. First one is specific goods or generic goods. Let us check up what is this specific goods or generic goods. These are the goods which have been actually identified and agreed by the parties at the time of contract of sale. The second subclassification of existing goods are unascertained goods. Let us check up what is an unascertained goods. Goods which are not specifically identified at the time of contract of sale. They are defined by the description only and may form part of the lot. Take for instance, my friend told me to buy his chairs. He has already 100 chairs, out of which I would like to buy 10 chairs. The 10 chairs what I would like to buy have not been identified by me nor my friend. If such be the case, such goods are called unascertained goods. These goods are out of existing goods only. Whereas specific goods means those goods which have been identified by both the buyer and the seller at the time of contract itself. Now, coming to the third subclassification of existing goods, that is ascertained goods. Let us check up what are ascertained goods. Goods which are identified after the formation of contract of sale. Therefore, these goods are those unascertained at the time of making the contract, may become ascertained when they are agreed upon by both the buyer and the seller. As I told you, out of 100 chairs where my friend has asked me to buy, and I promised him that I am going to buy 10 chairs, but I have already paid for that. But now I have gone to him and to pick up those 10 chairs. Then until today those chairs are called unascertained, and on ascertainment of the chairs of both the buyer and seller, they become ascertained goods. The second classification of goods are future goods. Let us check up what are future goods. Future goods means goods to be manufactured or produced or acquired by the seller after making the contract of sale. That is, these are the goods which are not available with the seller at the time when the contract is being made. Therefore, such goods are called as future goods. Take for instance, a manufacturer of table fans contracted to sell 100 fans to B at the rate of 400 per fan, and A agreed to purchase the fans, but the fans are yet to be manufactured. Therefore, the fans here are nothing but future goods. The third classification of goods is contingent goods. Contingent goods are always future goods. These are the type of future goods only, but which are also not in existence at the time of contract of sale, but the acquisition of the goods by the seller depends upon uncertain events. The uncertain event may or may not happen. Therefore, it is an agreement of sale. For example, if I would like to purchase the goods from an importer where there is no guarantee that the goods will be imported, and there is one more uncertainty regarding the country from whom the goods has to be exported. Therefore, such type of goods are called as contingent goods. All contingent goods are future goods only. One more important term that is very important in Sale of Goods Act is delivery. Let us check up what is delivery and what are its forms and derivatives. The term delivery means voluntary transfer of possession by one person to another. As a general rule, delivery of goods be made by doing anything which has the effect of putting the goods in the possession of the buyer or a person authorized to hold them on his behalf. Simply means the seller, whatever the goods have been sold to the buyer, has to deliver the same or give the goods to the buyer. That is technically called as delivery. Now, let us consider what are the various ways or the kinds of deliveries. Delivery may be of three ways. One is physical delivery or actual delivery. Let us check up one example. When the goods are physically delivered to the buyer, it is called as actual delivery or physical delivery. Example, the seller sold a book to the buyer, and handovering the book to the buyer is simply an actual delivery. Another kind of delivery is constructive delivery. Let us check up what is a constructive delivery. When the delivery is effected without any change in the custody or actual possession of a thing, as in the case of delivery by adornment, that is simply acknowledgement. Now, let us check out what is this. How come on sale the seller will be satisfied and the buyer will accept without giving delivery of goods? There may be a cases where the sold item or the purchased item may be bulk item. In such case, it may not be possible for either the seller or the buyer to take possession in person or actual delivery. That is, let us check up on this example, where a warehouseman holding the goods of A agrees to hold them on behalf of B at A's request. To be elaborate, let us check up this example. X sells to Y 100 bags of wheat lying in Z's warehouse. X order Z to deliver to Y. Z agrees to hold 100 bags on behalf of Y and make necessary entry in his books. That means the goods are at the warehouse itself. Merely the seller informs the warehouse keeper, and later the warehouse keeper intimates the same to the buyer. Simply by intimation of the warehouse keeper to the buyer will be constituted as delivery. Such a type of delivery is called as constructive delivery. Now, third kind of delivery, that is symbolic delivery. Let us check up what is this. When there is a delivery of a thing in token of transfer of something else, that is delivery of goods in case of transit may be made handing over documents of title to goods like bill of lading or railway receipt or delivery order or delivery challan or key of a warehouse containing the goods is handed over to the buyer. Such type of delivery is called symbolic delivery. This will be undertaken generally in case of goods which are bulky or heavy items. Take for instance, I have ordered the goods from Delhi to Vijayawada. The seller agreed for it and he has dispatched the goods via a transporter, and the transporter will give an acknowledgement to the seller. If the seller gives that acknowledgement to the buyer, that acknowledgement itself will be treated as delivery. Such type of delivery is called symbolic delivery. Or else one more example. Let us take this. Suppose if I purchase a lorry, the shopkeeper may not deliver the lorry physically or actually because he can't lift and I can't lift. But the seller has to deliver the item to the buyer. If such be the case, he will hand over the key of that lorry. Simply by handing over of key will be termed as delivery. Such type of delivery is called symbolic delivery. Here we have to think of one more important term, that is document of title to goods. Document of title to goods includes bill of lading, dock warrant, warehouse keeper certificate, war figure certificate, railway receipt, etc. This cannot be confused with another term called document showing title. document showing title cannot be transferred from one person to another person by merely handing over that to another, whereas document of title to goods can be transferred from one person to another. Now, let us check up one more important aspect, that is property in goods. Every goods generally have two types of properties. One is general property, that is right of ownership. The second one is special property, that is mere possession. In case of contract of sale, general property is very important rather than special property. Now let us check up this. Property means the general property, that is right of ownership in goods, and not a special property, that is special property indicates mere possession. Therefore, if I say there is a sale, the general property must be transferred from the seller to the buyer. Until then, I can't say that there is a valid sale. But special property may be transferred from one person to another in number of instances. Simply, bailer, consignment, and many areas we can find passing of simply special property from one person to another, but passing of general property, that is right of ownership, is crucial in Sale of Goods Act. Let us check up the main differences between sale and agreement to sell. Any existing goods can be sold, whereas future goods has to be sold as agreement to sell only. Next one. Sale, the term itself indicates, is an executed contract, whereas agreement to sell is an executory contract. In case of sale, the ownership in goods passes immediately, whereas ownership passes at a later date to the buyer in case of agreement to sell. Next one. Buyer can resell the goods in case of sale immediately, whereas buyer cannot resell the goods in case of agreement to sell unless he becomes the owner. Next one. Seller can sue the buyer for the price in case of sale immediately, whereas seller can sue only for damages if the buyer fails to pay in case of agreement to sell. Next one. Subsequent loss of goods is the liability of the buyer in case of sale, as the ownership is immediately transferred in case of sale, whereas subsequent loss of goods is the liability of the seller alone, because in case of agreement to sell, ownership will be with the seller only. Next one. In case of sale, it creates the right of rem, that is right against the whole world, whereas agreement to sell raises the right in personam, that is one against the another alone, that is buyer and seller, or seller and buyer. Third party cannot involve. Next one. In case of seller, in case of sale, if the seller becomes insolvent, buyer can get the goods even if he doesn't pay the goods also, because he is the owner of the goods. Whereas in case of agreement to sell, buyer cannot get the goods in case of the seller becomes the insolvent, even the price would have been paid. Next one, sale. Seller has to supply the goods to buyer under any circumstances because the buyer is the owner. In case of agreement to sell and the seller becomes insolvent, seller need not supply the goods. Next one, in case of sale, if the buyer becomes insolvent, seller cannot get the goods back because ownership has already passed it to the buyer even though the price has not been paid. Whereas in case of agreement to sell, if buyer becomes insolvent, seller can get back the goods because he is the owner of the goods. Last one, in case of sale, seller can claim rateable dividend on the buyer's insolvency. Whereas in case of agreement to sell, seller can claim only damages because the ownership is with the seller only. Now let us check up the differences between sale and hire purchase. The property in goods is transferred to the buyer immediately at the time of contract of sale in case of sale. Whereas in case of hire purchase, the property in goods passes to the hirer upon payment of the last installment. Second one, in case of sale, the position of buyer is that of the owner of the goods, whereas in case of hire purchase, the position of hirer is that of bailee till he pays the last installment. Next one, in case of sale, the buyer cannot terminate the contract and he is bound to pay the price of the goods. Whereas in case of hire purchase, the hirer may, if he so likes, terminate the contract by returning the goods to its owner without any liability to pay the remaining installments. Next one, the seller can take the risk of any loss resulting from the insolvency of the buyer in case of sale. Whereas in case of hire purchase, the owner takes no such risk. If the hirer fails to pay an installment, the owner has the right to take back the goods. Next one, in case of sale, the buyer can pass a good title to a bona fide purchaser from him. Whereas in case of hire purchase, the hirer cannot pass any title even to a bona fide purchaser. Last one, in case of sale, the buyer can resell the goods, whereas in case of hire purchase, the hire purchaser cannot resell unless he has paid all the installments. Let us check out the difference between sale and bailment. The property in goods is transferred from the seller to the buyer in case of sale, whereas there is only transfer of possession from one person, that is bailer, to the bailee in case of bailment. Second one, the return of goods in contract of sale is not possible, whereas the bailee must return the goods to the bailer in case of bailment. The last one, the consideration is the price in terms of money, whereas the consideration may be gracious or non-gracious in case of bailment.